You should have listened more when Father spoke about the importance of gold. Oh, I know it's boring for you.
Hello, my sweet summer children. I'm back with some juice to get you through the long night. And the night is dark and full of terrors. It's Creepy October, where we indulge in the creepiness of October. But anyway, I will link my Creeptober playlist at the top for your binge watching pleasure. But anywho, today we are traveling to the Smoking Sea, to the home of the Dragon Lords of old, Valyria. I wanted to visit Valyria because it is being reported, allegedly, one of the potential spin-offs for Game of Thrones is set in Valyria before the Doom. Now, Valyria was a growing empire. It was during the height of its rise when the Doom came to Valyria. So let's take a deeper look at what really happened, because one of the prophecies that people relate to the Doom of Valyria may actually reveal the ending of the series, and you might not like it. But anyway, so there are many different theories on what happened in Valyria, and I have my own. But Valyria was known as the Freehold of Valyria because it was ruled by many different landholders, powerful noble families. The Freehold of Valyria stretched over much of Essos. It's the capital of the Valyrian freehold, Valyria, that the singers sing songs about. So House Targaryen was one of these families of landholders in the freeholds of Valyria. House Targaryen managed to escape the Doom because Daenerys the Dreamer had a dream that the Doom would come to Valyria. At its apex, Valyria was the greatest city in the known world, the center of civilization. Within its shining walls, 20 rival houses vied for power and glory in courts and council, rising and falling in an endless, subtle, off-savage struggle for dominance. The Targaryens were far from the most powerful of the Dragon Lords, and their rivals saw their flight to Dragonstone as an act of surrender, as cowardice. But Lord Aenar's maiden daughter Daenys, known forever afterward as Daenys the Dreamer, had foreseen the destruction of Valyria by fire. And when the Doom came 12 years later, the Targaryens were the only Dragon Lords to survive. Now, there's a popular theory that it was actually House Targaryen that caused the Doom. I mean, if you think about it, they weren't there. And the reason they weren't there is kind of sketchy, because a girl had a dream and her father believed her and packed up his family and dragons and packed up everything he knew and left everything he knew and moved to Dragonstone. House Targaryen was actually one of the smaller landholders in the freehold. They weren't necessarily powerful, but in Westeros, they are kings. So could the Targaryens have caused the Doom? Sure, but how? Because in my opinion, all signs point to the Faceless Men of Braavos. When Arya is in Braavos, she is told the tale of the beginning of the Order of the Faceless Men. They date back to Valyria of old. Whoever he was, he moved amongst the slaves and would hear them at their prayers. Men of 100 different nations labored in the mines, and each prayed to his own God in his own tongue, yet all were praying for the same thing. It was release they asked for, an end to pain, a small thing and simple, yet their gods made no answer, and their suffering went on. Are their gods all deaf? He wondered, until a realization came upon him one night in the red darkness. All gods have their instruments, men and women who serve them and help to work their will on earth. The slaves were not crying out to 100 different gods, as it seemed, but to one God with 100 different faces, and he was that God's instrument. That very night, he chose the most wretched of slaves, the one who prayed most earnestly for release and freed him from his bondage. The first gift had been given. Arya drew back from him. He killed the slave? That didn't sound right. He should have killed the masters. He would bring the gift to them as well, but that's a tale for another day, one best shared with no one. So quite literally, the kindly man admits that the faceless men would bring the gift of death to the masters as well. And this seems to be one story that occurred at one time, the Doom of Valyria. But was it the Targaryens that hired the faceless men? And if so, what was the cost of destroying an entire capital filled with people? And how would the Targaryens know to seek out the faceless men? Or at that time, was it like just one faceless man? Or maybe a lot of time had passed before this happened, and at the time the Assassin Guild was becoming known? But how did they do it? What kind of magic could have caused such an event? A handful of maesters, influenced by fragments of the work of Septon Barth, hold that Valyria had used spells to tame the 14 Flames for thousands of years, that their ceaseless hunger for slaves and wealth was as much to sustain these spells as to expand their power, and that when at last those spells faltered, the cataclysm became inevitable. Firstly, I think Septon Barth has all the juice. Out of all the maesters, I think he knows what he's talking about the most. So this quote says that the Valyrians had spells that kept the 14 flames from erupting. And it also says the slaves and wealth was as much to sustain these spells. So what was the slaves doing to sustain these spells? And if they, was it blood sacrifice? Probably. But who is the person responsible for this, responsible for casting the spells and keeping these fires at bay? Is it one person? Is it more than one person? Is it kill them and there will be no one left to work these spells to keep these fires at bay? And fires that have been kept at bay by magic for 1,000 years, when they finally break free from those spells that have bound them up, they would probably explode with such velocity we would get something similar to the Doom. But who hired the faceless men is the question. In my honest opinion, I feel like I know it was the faceless men. I know the faceless men have some weird connection to weirwood magic, but who hired them? Of course the Targaryens could have hired them. They seem to benefit from the Doom. After the Doom, they had the world's last living dragons, and they built the greatest dynasty that the world has ever seen because of it. But there are other candidates for this role. The Citadel is one of them. The Citadel of Westeros and the Archmaesters and Maesters, they're all sketchy as I don't know what, and the Valyrians did not like them. Before the Doom of Valyria, maesters and archmaesters oft-traveled to the Freehold in search of answers, but none were ever found. Septon Barth claims that the Valyrians came to Westeros because their priest prophesied that the doom of man would come out of the land beyond the narrow sea, can safely be dismissed as nonsense, as can many of Barth's queer beliefs and suspicions. Okay, so archmaesters and maesters would go over to Valyria before the Doom looking for knowledge, and the Valyrians were basically like, fuck off. And the Valyrians said fuck off because apparently they had shunned Westeros because their priest said the doom of man would come from there. So did the doom of Valyria come from there? Is that what that meant by the doom of men? Or were they talking about White Walkers in the Long Night and other shit? Now, this maester is shooting down Septon Barth's claim, but Septon Barth's claims seem to be in line with the actual story. See, Septon Barth was considered crazy by Baelor the Blessed, and all of Septon Barth's work were ordered to be destroyed by Baelor the Blessed. Baelor the Blessed was a maniac. He wasn't cruel, he was like the High Sparrow on crack. So yeah, Septon Barth has the juice. So the archmaesters or maesters of the Citadel could have hired the faceless men to do their work on the Valyrian Dragon Lords, not only because they saw the Dragon Lords as a threat that might eventually come west, but because they were shunned and denied any knowledge or higher learning from the Valyrians. Not only this, but Marwyn the Mage tells Sam the Citadel has an image of how the world should be. Not only that, but he hints to the Citadel being behind the death of dragons. Aemon would have gone to her if he had the strength. He wanted us to send a maester to her, to counsel her and protect her and fetch her safely home. Did he? Archmaester Marwyn shrugged. Perhaps it's good that he died before he got to Old Town. Elsewise, the gray sheep might have had to kill him, and that would have made the poor old deers wring their wrinkled hands. Kill him? Sam said, shocked. Why? If I tell you, they may need to kill you too. Marwyn smiled a ghastly smile, the juice of the sour leaf running red between his teeth. Who do you think killed all the dragons the last time around? Gallant dragon slayers armed with swords? He spat. The world the Citadel is building has no place in it for sorcery or prophecy or glass candles, much less for dragons. So the Citadel is definitely a candidate. I mean, for Valyrians to have shunned them, they have Valyrian scrolls, the blood-soaked tomb as ancient as ever. They have glass candles. I mean, they have these things. They also somehow managed to forge Valyrian steel links in their chains. But I digress. And right now, a faceless man is walking their halls disguised as Pate at this very moment. So yeah, they're kind of at the top of the list. But other people have connected the Lannisters to the doom. The wealth of the Westerlands was matched in ancient times with the hunger of the freehold of Valyria for precious metals. Yet there seems no evidence that the Dragon Lords ever made contact with the Lords of the Rock, Casterly or Lannister. Septim Barth speculated on the matter, referring to a Valyrian text that has since been lost, suggesting that the Freehold's sorcerers foretold that the gold of Casterly Rock would destroy them. So it said that the gold of Casterly Rock would destroy them. House Lannister commissioned a Valyrian steel sword, Bright Roar, and it said the cost of the sword was enough to pay for an army. Now, it could have been that King Joffrey II, the king who commissioned the sword, lied about the price and simply bought something else. Something from the Faceless Men when he went to Valyria to collect the sword. I mean, look at the name of the sword, Bright Roar. You could say that Valyria went up in a bright roar, brightness from the volcanic flames and the roaring of erupting, exploding volcanoes. But why would the Lannisters want to kill the Valyrians? Because they were more wealthy? Because they feared them? Who knows? But the other side of this is that it may not have directly been the Lannisters. Whoever the Lannisters used to commission the sword that charged them an amount that was enough to hire an army took that payment and brought on the doom of Valyria with the gold from Casterly Rock. They used that gold to pay the Faceless Men, and that brought on the doom. But who this person could be and why, I have no idea. I actually think that the Valyrian prophecies did not apply to the doom of Valyria, and they might apply to the right now. The prophecy that the doom of man would come out of Westeros, well, yeah, the doom of man is coming out of Westeros from the north. His name is the Night King, and if it isn't stopped, it will be the doom of men. The doom of Valyria wasn't the doom of men. Men are still alive. People are still alive. So I believe that prophecy applies to the right now. So if that prophecy applies to the right now, then maybe the whole gold of Casterly Rock destroying them applies to the right now. The last dragon still flies. Daenerys has the blood of old Valyria, and so does Jon Snow. So what might the gold of Casterly Rock do to them? According to Tywin, the mines of Casterly Rock are all dried up, but surely there's Lannister gold and Casterly Rock gold all over Westeros. But Cersei of House Lannister has a lot of gold, and she's just giving it to the Iron Bank to hire an army of sellswords, the Golden Company. So according to the Valyrian prophecy, could Cersei really end every trace of Valyria and dragons and be the one on the throne at the end of this thing? Just throwing this out there, I would be highly disappointed if that happens. Like, if Jon and Daenerys die, I would be pissed. But it seems the fandom is split. Like, half thinks they have to live, half thinks they have to die. But keep this in mind. If Casterly Rock's gold didn't cause the doom of Valyria, there's a prophecy suggesting that the gold of Casterly Rock would destroy the Valyrians. There are still 2 Valyrians left, Jon and Daenerys. But what do you think? As always, thanks for watching. Thanks to everyone who supports me on Patreon. If you like this video, please give it a thumbs up. Please click that subscribe button, hit that notification bell, and join the Sweet Summer family. Okay, my sweet summer children, have a good day.